Hi everyone, how are you? Today I wanted to talk about my everyday carry or my pocket notebook. As some of you may know, I am using an A5 right now for journaling. This is a full year Stalogy, so it is a heavy and bulky notebook, and even though I love it, it is not something that I take with me when I am out and about. If I know that I'm going to spend a significant amount of time sitting down journaling or something like that, I will bring it with me. But if I'm just going about my day, I want to have a notebook with me, but not such a big one. I've seen that a lot of people has this resolution for this new year of trying to spend less time on their phones, and I am the same. I don't want to spend a lot of time with my phone, but I am trying to find a balance, because for me my phone is very important. I live very far away from home. I live in another country with another time zone, and the phone is the way that I keep a somewhat seamless contact with my family and my friends back home. It makes it very easy. I'm up to date with their lives. It could be on social media, through video calling, texting. So for me, giving up social media, it's not really an option or something that I am particularly inclined to do right now. However, that doesn't mean that I don't want to reduce the amount of time that I spend on social media. I've found myself very moody after using my phone. I think that I am easily maybe rage bait, or I come across some political content that I am not seeking and I don't want to always consume, because it distresses me, because it's not the right moment to just be exposed to that information. And I think I want to, not that I think, I know that I want to have the choice to be exposed to certain content whenever I want. And I'm finding that that is increasingly difficult when you're just scrolling down, because you just come across videos that can be very sensitive and sensitive content, and it makes it difficult for me to just remove that image from my head if I'm just going to keep going about my day. And I find that that's not the time to think about a certain topic. So this notebook plays a significant role when I am outside, and I, instead of just going and start scrolling down on Instagram or TikTok, I find some other more meaningful ways to make sense of what surrounds me, my thoughts, my ideas. So I have 3 different sizes here that I like to switch. So I have a Hobonichi A6, so an A6 notebook, a passport notebook, and a B7 notebook. The one that I use the most is my traveler's notebook or traveler's company passport size, just because it's a traveler's system, so I can switch my inserts depending on what I'm interested in that moment. However, sometimes I like the length of the permanency of a longer bound notebook, feeling that I can access this information for a longer time, that I can put things that are more maybe time sensitive, and I can still have a good chunk of a notebook to go. And it's kind of the same with this Edit notebook. It's actually a pretty thick notebook, just the size. It's a passport slim kind of situation here. So let's go over my passport traveler's notebook first, because I think it's the one that it has almost everything that I use, and the different ways that I use this notebook when I am out and about. So this is like I said, a traveler's company passport size in blue. I got it a very long time ago, so it has a beautiful shiny patina, and I've used it consistently for years. It's not my wallet, though sometimes I do put my more important cards here, but I tend not to use it as a wallet anyway because I don't want it to get too bulky. So the contents of this notebook change. It changes depending on what I want to focus on that month, or something that I've just discovered and I'm excited to learn more about. So I probably switch the notebooks, I'm gonna say, pretty often. So what I have here is one of those plastic folders that they have, but I just cut it so I can open it and glue some sticky pockets here. So I use it kind of as another kind of craft folder, but plastic folder, where I have stickers. I have some information about our apartment and some extra loose sheets of paper for stamping if I come across any stamping station, and I can use it to then maybe send it to my friends or glue it into the big journal here. The first notebook that I have here is something very new that I started this year, and it's a restaurant and cafe notebook. So I find myself very often forgetting about places that I've loved and I've only been there once, because I don't tend to save them on my phone, or we didn't take any pictures of that moment and I just don't have any recollection, or I don't have access to my big journal, so I cannot remember which places we've visited. And that happens that often we spend a significant amount of time on the street trying to find on maps like another restaurant to try, and maybe everything is full. So I wanted to try to find a solution for that. So I decided to start this journal. So every time we go to a cafe or a restaurant, I will print some pictures, the name, and I will just write the menu that we had that day, our star rating if we liked it or not, maybe a comment about the place itself. For example, this cafe, it's very lovely, however it does get very busy and it doesn't have that many tables. So that it's important information for me to know that maybe during peak hours is not the greatest option, because it will probably be full, or we have to wait outside, and if it's cold, it's just not something that we want to do. And also I ask myself, do you want to go back? And then I say yes or no, and if I say yes, I put a circle here, and if it's a no, I will put an X. I also put here places that we did not like, because in case we forgot that we went there, I want to know that we did actually go there, we didn't like it, let's not spend more money there. And also the location of that place. So this is very fun. I've been doing it for a little bit. I don't know, something that I don't do all the time. Maybe I sit down one afternoon and do like 6 of them that we've been in a month, and then it's a good collection. If I find that it gets too bulky, I may remove it or not, but for now this is what we have here. Then I have a craft folder which has the pencil board, and what it is, just a simple notebook, and I reckon the most important notebook of the system. So there's a lot of information here, like I do journal when I'm outside. Sometimes I may use it as a bullet journal. Sometimes I use it for ideas that I want to do on social media, that instead of just writing those notes on my notes app, I come here and I just write them here. I've tried trackers too, because since I always have this notebook with me, but I'm not very good at tracking anyway. And I have different lists that I like to do when I'm out and about. For example, my friends' coffee orders. I love to get my friends coffee and as a surprise, so I don't want to ask them what do you like to drink, because I feel like it spoils a little bit the surprise. So every time we go to a cafe and I go with a different friend, I tend to pay attention to what they order more often. So for example, my friend likes only to drink hot coffee, she doesn't like iced coffee, and another one of my friends doesn't really like ice that much, so she always goes for less ice when she orders iced coffee or iced tea. So those little things, I think that they can be very significant when you are trying to surprise them. So I like to write those things down. And one of the things that I wanted to also touch on this video is some ideas. I know that a lot of people always ask, what do you write about? Like, I want to start journaling, I want to spend less time on my phone, but when I'm outside and I have my notebook, I open it and I don't know what to write. So I guess that I'm going to give you some ideas just in case you find yourself also not knowing what to write about. This could be an idea: your friend's coffee orders, your coffee order. Maybe one day you are, I don't know, on the bus and you want to write your favorite coffees, your favorite cafes, or your favorite teas, or your favorite tea brands, something like that. Just like silly lists that instead of spending that time scrolling, you can just think about and also meditate a little bit about the simple things that you enjoy in life. That could be an option. Another thing that I like to always do is describe what I'm doing, where I am, what is the weather. Like if I'm in a cafe, I would say which part of the city I'm in, what is the name of the cafe, what is the vibe there, what can I see, what can I smell, what I order, how I feel about that order that I did, and what I'm actually doing. Like I came here for what reason. I'm waiting for someone, or I am just spending time by myself, and why did I feel like I need to spend that time by myself. Just kind of ask myself those typical questions like what, when, who, and how. And I often feel like it leads to deeper thoughts and maybe like hidden meanings there. And it's kind of fun to see what you end up journaling about, and it's probably maybe something that you didn't even think about when you sat down with your notebook and pen. But that's kind of the beauty of journaling. But sometimes I also feel myself like, okay, I've done that, I don't have anything to say, but I don't want to gravitate towards my phone. I need to come up with something else to write about. So I always carry, right now I have it here, but I always carry a list of things that I like to write down. And it doesn't matter if I wrote this list down 100 times. I find that they always slightly change, and I love to revisit these lists. So for example, one of my first ideas is, it's in Spanish, but it says a list of things that make life worth living. So that could be your morning coffee, or starting a new notebook, or re-inking your fountain pen. It could be conversations with friends, late nights, whatever it is, the smell of popcorn, whatever it is that you love and adore. I think it's such a beautiful list to do, and I love to do it because I found, and when I compare those lists over the years, I found that they always slightly change depending on where I am, how old I am, things like that. Another thing is the words that I like the sound of. So I live in a foreign country to me, so I'm constantly learning new words and learning new vocabulary. So I like to write those words down. Like maybe those words don't have an actual meaning in my language, in my mother tongue. We don't have a specific word for that. That's kind of beautiful to learn more about what it means. So I like to just write new words. It could be in any language, it could be in my own language. I also like to write things that I want to Google later, things that I want to research later, because I find that if I research a lot of stuff on my phone, I will inevitably go to Instagram or go to TikTok or something like that. So I tend to do research on my computer because I actually don't like scrolling down on my computer. I think it's much more intentional for me when I am on my PC, so I like to do the research there. So I always like to have a list of things that I want to Google later. For example, the snippets of conversations that you overhear, we are always a little bit curious. So maybe it could be just a sentence and you can come up with a full story about what is that sentence about. You could do it as a creative exercise. What about perfumes that you want to try, or candles that you want to buy, incense, for example? I don't know. beer that you want to try, wine, could be something, whatever it is. Sweet simplicities, for example, things that you enjoy and they are very particular to you. Maybe a wish list. Doesn't mean that you have to buy it, but it's just a wish list. There's an intention there. A reading list could be. Also maybe things that you've lost or things that you have found. Sometimes we found like pieces of paper, postcards on like secondhand books. You can just make a list of those. So these are some of the things that I always have this little paper tag in my everyday carry. And when I don't know what to write about, or maybe I come across a great idea and I don't have time to do it at that moment, I will write it here. And when I sit down and I'm like, okay, I have some time, I don't want to be on my phone, what can I write? I have a list here and it helps me. So I like to do that. So that is something that I also love to carry around. But this first notebook, sometimes it changes. And sometimes, for example, like I said, I'm constantly learning a new language. So I have these two notebooks. That this one is when I first started to learn Korean. So it's very, very basic and my writing was terrible and things like that. But instead of, I don't know, just doing something that it doesn't going to make me happy, maybe I can do something slightly not only productive, but makes me like grow as a person or feel more comfortable, feel more confident. So I would like to, in my little notebook, review numbers, review vocabulary, maybe a grammar point that was a bit difficult. Or sometimes, I went to a place for the first time. I went to the doctor for the first time, and I didn't know how to express myself properly, and I was very nervous that the doctor was not going to speak, and he doesn't have to speak English. So I would ask my partner, how can I say this, and how can I have a natural conversation, more or less, kind of like a mock-up conversation of what can they say to me. So my partner very graciously would help me, and I would write it down. And when I was on my way to the doctor's office, I would read that conversation over and over and over, and I felt much more confident when I went there. So if you're learning a language, I think having a small pocket notebook about mock-up conversations or useful sentences, useful phrasings, and stuff like that you may use when you are, at a restaurant, cafe, doctor's appointment, library, whatever it is, it's kind of useful to have. So this one, it's already retired because, as my knowledge progresses, I find that I have other needs. So now I have this one, and when I'm very actively learning, it's when I put it here. But sometimes we take a step down. Maybe I slow down my learning, or I am focused on another aspect of my life. It could be maybe even health stuff or gym, and I want to have a gym tracker or exercise that I like to do at the gym, or how to do it, because also no idea how to use the machines, right? So maybe I like to have something like that. I also have a quotes notebook. So if I am reading a book that I am absolutely adoring, and I find little treasures every time I read the book, maybe I want to keep this one with me because I will write more like quotes at the time. So I will have this with me. And also I love to reread, because these are quotes that are very meaningful to me. I just don't write whatever I find, just quotes that do really mean a lot. So I love to reread those because it makes me extremely happy to come back to these little quotes. So this could be, a quotes book. This is something very, very special that my friend made for me, and I carry a lot, especially during significant time like Christmas or birthdays, stuff like that. And she called it a note for when you feel homesick. As I said, I am living very far away from home, so I cannot show you because she put beautiful pictures of herself and my friends here. But every time I feel like I really miss home, and living far away, sometimes if you express that you are very homesick, people will say, why don't you come back? And it's not about coming back or staying, it's about missing something so simple as a smell or as hearing my own mother tongue or something like that. And maybe I want to keep that feeling to myself rather than express it out loud. So I will come to this notebook and just write that little letter to myself about what I missed. And also, I can see pictures of my friends here, and I tend to print those. So it makes me very happy. At the same time, it makes me emotional, but it makes me very happy to have that here. So, and it doesn't mean that you have to live in another country. Maybe you live 20 minutes away from your family, but you know, life sometimes gets busy. We don't make time for things, and maybe you don't see them often. So maybe you can also have, notes for when you feel homesick, or notes to your younger self, notes to your older self, I don't know, something like that, notes to your partner, notes to your friend, and maybe you want to give them this when you see them. This is all I thought about when I was far away from you, and now I want to give it to you. And when I come back to, well, that's a great idea, I may do that. I may start a notebook with little letters to my friend and, you know, give it to her, and when I come back here to Korea, then she can read it if she misses me or thinks about me. That's a great idea too. You know, so these are the little things that I like to do when I am out and about. I also have sticker release paper because, you know, if you live in a country that it's very sticker friendly and it has a lot of ephemera, it's very cool to collect things from your discoveries. So I like to also have these ones, though they are very bulky, so I don't tend to always take them with me, just when I'm traveling. But anyway, that is a good thing to have too if you like to decorate your pages, or maybe you have a pocket notebook to do collages, because maybe you say, hey, I don't like to write, but I like to express myself visually. So maybe you can have your little extra papers already cut out, maybe some sticker, maybe like some double-sided tape, and you can make your own collages small when you are outside. You know, who knows? So these are some of the things that I like to write, and I hope that was helpful for you guys. I also have this little notebook that I wanted to show you, because maybe you think, oh, passport, it's too big for me. Well, this is a great notebook. This is a Marks ink. It's called Edit, and this is a B7 size. So again, it's a passport slim size, pretty chunky, but it doesn't really weigh at all. And here I just had everything like writing, and also it's such a small notebook that when I was at work and I wanted to, you know, just take something out of my chest, but I didn't want to, you know, anyone seeing me like writing there, like, you know, like I was extremely mad, I will just write this little notebook, grab this little notebook and, you know, write it. And I find that this is such a perfect size to carry in all my pockets, not even in my bag, just in my pocket. But you know, women's clothes usually don't have very big and spacious pockets. So anyway, there was a lot. Even like Tokyo map on here is when we were planning to go to Tokyo, and my partner started to see, okay, this is where we're going, this is far away, this is whatever. So, and I think I had a list of coffee and places I wanted to visit, places I wanted to go for lunch and stuff like that on here. So we were trying to map out each day which area we could go. And yeah, things like that. And sometimes it's just like quotes, recommendations, whatever it is. So I really love this pocket size notebook. And again, it's very good if you just want to write when you are sending, because it has a cardstock cover, so it gives you some like structure there, and it's very small, like it's the size of my hand, the size of a small fountain pen. And it's just a great notebook, and the paper is great. You can write with fountain pen if you so wish to, which is not something that I tend to do outside. But if you still like to write with fountain pen when you are out and about, Marks ink is a very good little notebook, and I think it's a Japanese brand. However, there are times where I want bigger notebooks, and for me an A6 is still a pocket notebook. I know that it's not going to be for everyone, but for me an A6 is still a pocket notebook because, again, actually nothing really fits in my pockets, so it's what fits in my bag. So an A6 for me is still a pocket notebook, and especially I like to use these ones when I feel like there's a lot going on. For example, this upcoming week I'm in the middle of 3 interviews process with 3 different companies, and I have 2 more interviews next week. There's a lot of information I can't remember, and I don't want to get things mixed up, and I want to maybe highlight some of my skills in one company and in another company highlight something else because it aligns better with their philosophy or their culture or whatever. So I like to have a bit more space for those things so I don't get confused. And again, for me, this notebook is not very big. It's very comfortable. Of course, if you compare it with this one, there's a significant jump, but still, for me, it's not a big notebook at all, and it feels very comfortable to carry around, and it gives me a little bit more of the idea that maybe the things that I have here can last me a little bit longer than an insert, just because it has more pages and it's a bound book too. But of course it's a bound book, which means, and here I have 2 notebooks, here I will only have 1. It depends on what I feel like I need to. But for example, on here I do have a monthly with appointments on here, and I cross the appointments that already happened. So if I have, like now that I have interviews going on and there's a lot of places that I need to be time sensitive, I may want to carry this around because I can more clearly see what is happening. And here I also did, see my friend's coffee order. I don't mind to write these 1,000 times because, again, it just stops me from doing something that it can distress me, and thinking about my friends makes me happy. Thinking about their coffee, it's okay to think about that. So that is another good notebook to have, is an A6. So I always toy around with the idea of I think Field Notes probably is like, I don't know, but like Leuchtturm or Moleskine, I think they are A6 slim, so it's maybe same height, different width. Passport is still smaller than an A6, but again, for me, all of these are pocket notebooks, and that is some of the things that I like to do with my everyday carry. Like, I know that some people, there's a lot of emphasis these days on journaling and the analog life, and oh, the sun just left. But I know that it's sometimes very difficult to know what to write, especially if you're not used to. And I think writing and journaling is just like a muscle. You will develop your own style the more you do it, the more you practice, I guess, and you will learn what you like and what you don't like, and there's a lot of trial and error there. But I love an everyday carry because it brings me so much comfort to just have it. And sometimes I just bring it like this and I have it on my hand because it brings me some comfort to touch it. So this is something that it's very important for me, and it's not only practical like learning language or being on top of my appointments and stuff like that, but also it's a place for reflection and being more intentional and being less consuming things without sometimes wanting to, meaning to, being forced. Some videos and stuff like that I don't care or I don't want to see when I am grocery shopping or something like that. So for me, this is very important to just carry around because it grounds me, I guess. That's how I would describe it. So I hope you enjoy it. It's just to give you some ideas as to what you can do with your everyday carry if you find yourself not reaching for it because you don't know what to write, and maybe some style of notebooks that you can try and see which one do you like. I would love to maybe try a field note size, like a real pocket size, because sometimes the passport is tiny too small, but A6 is a bit too big. So that in between sweet spot, I would like to try it myself because I haven't tried it yet. But for now, I'm very happy with this setup, especially which is the one that I've been using since 2018 that I got this notebook, I think, and it's been working great. So that's all for me. If you have any recommendations of pocket notebooks or prompts or ideas that people can journal about when they are outside, please let me know. You can even draw or whatever it is, and I would love to hear from you, and I'll see you soon.